way up the whole time. The Hague Convention and having to been in The Hague. So running the class from The Hague last week. It's just funny how things work out that way, but still. So let's move on to the second part of our session tonight, which will be an engaging one, I think. We've got some workshop activities, and I'm going to hand over to Shirin to manage all of this lot. Shirin's put a lovely biography of herself up on the contact page in Blackboard site with her photo, so you can check her out there. She's currently at Supreme Court Library, Queensland, and has got a long background of working with Crown Law and QUT and all sorts of different places. And she's a lawyer herself before becoming a librarian.
Hello, just wanted to check that you can hear me okay. Can you hear me?
Is she there?
I'm here. Just wanted to check you can hear me.
Shirin, are you there?
Oh, hello. Oh, beautiful.
Yes, good.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. That's great. Yes, we can hear you very clearly. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, all right, yes. That's all right. So it's over to you to help everybody work through those exercises and some of the questions.
Thank you. I think there might be a bit of a delay, but I'll keep talking. So there's a few questions that came through via the Facebook group. So we thought we'd address those to begin with, if that's okay. So one of the questions related to what was the difference between a reported and an unreported case, and those cases which were authorized or unauthorized. So as Jill mentioned, I'm from the Supreme Court Library, and the courts of Queensland, like other courts, are constantly producing cases, and the decisions are published on the court's websites pretty quickly after they're handed down by the judge. So these are referred to as unreported. There's a large bulk of them, they're online, and those are usually taken up by the different publishers, LexisNexis and Westlaw, and so those are put on their sites, also in an unreported form. Some of those cases are particularly interesting to other judges, to legal professionals such as barristers and lawyers. Those cases will be looked at by the publishers and put together in a different way, and they'll be reported in the law report series that are produced by the various publishers. Those report series, some of them are authorized and others are unauthorized. So ones that are authorized, they can be found in AGLC 3, and most importantly, they're looked at, the publishers send them back to the courts, and the courts, usually the judges themselves or their associates, look them over and make sure that they're okay. And so those are published in particular report series and are considered authorized. Most courts will accept only the authorized versions to be handed in. And so when we're sort of looking for a case, we'll often give our client the authorized version if there is one available. If there isn't an authorized version available, then we'll give them the unauthorized but reported version. And if it's not a reported case, then we'll give them an unreported version. So there's almost a hierarchy of cases that we look at. I hope that makes sense. There seems to be a question coming through. No, sorry, that's Kate. So another question that came through was in relation to how do we find court forms. And generally, court forms, if you're making an application to a court or wanting to submit evidence in a court, it has to be in a particular format. And that format is prescribed by legislation. And so those court forms are put up on the court websites for either lawyers or self-represented litigants, parties to a case, to submit their evidence or to make their application to the courts. A lot of the time we are asked for, at the Crown Law Library and Supreme Court Library, we're asked for particular wording to put into those forms. And those practice books that Jill just mentioned in the previous lecture are full of helpful phrases and paragraphs that they can use, and we refer to those as precedents. So that's just an example of a court website and from Queensland Courts. And here, if we can get the pointer, here is the where you can find the court forms in their sort of basic format. They look a little bit like this. So a court form will give you the form number, the act that it comes under, the name of the court form. The registry details are completed by the registry when you're first applying to court, but then you would put in all the other details, including the text here. So it's just an example of a court form. Once those court forms have been filed with the court, it may be that somebody's come to the library and asked to see something that's been filed with the court. Generally, the library can't provide those; they're not published and publicly available. So they would need to go to the registry for that information. So working through some of the exercises that we had last week, really just wanting to ensure that we felt comfortable with interpreting citations. So one of the main things when you're interpreting a citation, whether it's a citation of a case or it may be even a journal citation, such as the examples Jill showed earlier tonight, you can often find those in various indexes. So Cardiff is probably one of the most comprehensive ones, and I think we linked through from Blackboard to Cardiff and to the QUT index of legal abbreviations. And so often if you have a citation, you can just put in your phrase in your citation here, or if you know the name of the court and you're looking for a citation, you can look for it the other way around. So taking, for example, one of the exercises was Chan Yi Kin and the Minister for Immigration, I think, Affairs. We would know that that year is 1986 and it's volume number 169 of the report series. CLR I would have typed into the previous page and come up with a range of abbreviations for CLR. So when you're thinking about the legal library reference interview, you're often wanting to maybe get a bit more information if you can. So if you know that it's within the Australian jurisdiction, then it's most likely to be the Commonwealth Law of Horts. If it's a different jurisdiction, the abbreviation may be the same, but for a different report series. If any questions, do feel free to put your hand up or put something in the chat box. Hopefully this is fairly straightforward for everybody, but very important because bread and butter of what I do day to day as a research librarian is find cases and materials for library clients. This was another one of the exercises. So this was the Crown against White, 2004, and this particular abbreviation was for the Victorian Court of Appeal. This is a screenshot from QUT legal abbreviations. So there's different websites that you can find. This is also a good one. So the Law Library at QUT have done this. And one good thing that they've done is they've indicated which of the law reports are authorised. So the Victorian law reports and Victorian reports are the authorised reports from the Supreme Court of Victoria. And then for our unreported version, that's the source. Okay. We also wanted to introduce in the first of these exercises the different citators. So a citator is an index of different cases, and that will, we've got three main ones, so case-based, law cite, and first point we've included as citators, and that index will give you information about a particular case. With case-based, you would go to the LexisNexis homepage, and often you'll find it listed here, and you can search or browse case-based that way, or you can go into, by tab, go into cases and then search for case-based cases. And so that will just give you, I think it's in the next slide, that will give you the ability to search for party names, for catchwords, words and phrases, or by citation, which is what we have here. It's not uncommon when you get a query from a lawyer or a judge that they'll have only part of the information. So for example, they may give you one of the parties' names and the year, or the report series, Queensland reports, and they don't know the year, but they may know the area of law. So this gives you a few options to search for the case in a case citator. So here we have 1958 case. You'll remember that the square brackets indicate that that's the means of finding the case. So round brackets, there'll also be a volume number, but when there's no volume number and the law report is organised by year, then you would have square brackets on the year. Alternatively, if it's a medium neutral case and it's organised by year, you'll also find that there are square brackets. So this particular query came up on Facebook from one of our students. So this was the case, News Limited and the Australian Rugby Football League Limited as well. What you'll find by going to case-based, you'll get a lot of information about the case. You'll get the party names, and then you'll get a range of different sources. So this is saying that it's from the Federal Court Reports, the Australian Law Journal, a variety of other journals, and it was queried that the BC number couldn't be found. So that's indicating that it's an unreported version of the case. BC is very specific to LexisNexis. So as I mentioned, the court will publish their decisions in an unreported fashion. Those are pushed into the different sites. So LexisNexis will have their own sort of index that they use, and so the BC numbers are very specific to LexisNexis, and then they often will take up a medium neutral citation as well for that. And so then the citator gives you the basic information about the case, the court, the judge's judgment to date, and then the catchwords that they use. So if you were subject searching for the case, these would be some of the terms that would come up in relation to that. Highlight the common name of the case. Jill, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, if you like, just very quickly. Can you see where you got the parties, so News Limited and Australian Rugby Football League Limited, and in brackets in black the Super League case? Some cases just get a nickname and they're referred to commonly by that name. I can remember being in the library one day and one of the lawyers was in court and they had a quick recess, like 10 minutes. He says, "I need the potato case." I need it now. What's the potato case? And it had been referred to by another lawyer in court as the potato case. So, you know, this was a few years ago where the online systems weren't quite as good as they are today. So do watch out for those sort of interesting quirks that come through as well. So if you're asked for the Super League case, there you go. Okay, back to you.
Thank you. There's no questions from the class. Yep, we keep going. So I mentioned one of the other citators was LawCite. So that's on OSLI, and that's freely available. So if you go to the OSLI website, you have a few options to search. The advanced search, I think Jill mentioned, has Boolean operators, which is very helpful. And then the citator is available just under that. So you just click on the citator, and that will take you to, I didn't put it as a screenshot, but it will take you to a very similar interface as the LexisNexis one, where you can put in party names or the citation or keyword searches. So this was one of the exercises that was on Blackboard. So it's a 1932 case in the appeal courts, and that page number. What we did is when we put that into the citator, we got the case, the name, Donoghue and Stevenson, and then we had a range of different citations for that case. And so at the very bottom of those was the citation that we're looking for. I think the question was also asked, how do we know which one is authorized? So if we're wanting to find out which ones are authorized in Australia, we look at the AGLC3. If we're looking at UK cases, I think it's the Incorporated Council of Law Reporting that are the authorized ones. And quick way to find those is probably through University LibGuide. We'll often list those. In the case of Donoghue and Stevenson, it's the UK House of Lords is the unreported version, and then the reported versions from the all ERs, and then the authorized version is the AC, the appeal case. But you have to do a little bit of digging to get that information, but it is available online. So this is another English case. So went to LawCite again and put in the citation here. I guess one thing maybe to note is once you start to become familiar with the different tools, use them more frequently, you start to know which law report series is in which database. So not all databases will have full text of all of the versions of a case. And if you're specifically looking for an authorized version of a case, you'll find it in one of those databases. What we're creating at the moment at the Supreme Court Library, and once it's finished, I may get permission to share it with you all, is which law report series are reported in which of the databases. So then you can say, oh, I'm looking for the all ERs, and I know that they're all in OSLI or Bailey. Or if I'm looking for, I don't know, Queensland reports, QDRs, then I know that they're all in LexisNexis, and that becomes a bit of a quicker way to source those cases. Often at the court, just to give you a sense of what it's like, if you're not already working as a law librarian, we'll get a rush maybe in the afternoon from judges, magistrates, needing cases very quickly, and usually quite a number of them. So they've all been referred to by the parties in the case in support of their arguments, and the judges will need the full text of those to read them through. So we're often needing to obtain the correct version of cases, and often very quickly on a day-to-day basis. When do you think that list would be available? I could probably send you, we've done more than half of it. We're just adding to it and refining it at the moment. So it's just our own cheat sheet, and you may sort of want to look at it as a template and just add to it with your own sort of report series that you're using as well, David. But I'll ask maybe in the next few weeks I could make something available to you. That's okay. Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier which version. This is from the Melbourne University LibGuide. So appeal cases between 1890 were the authorized version, and then it goes to the Incorporated Council of Law Reporting, which is a non-profit and the reporting publisher, and that gives an example of how that's cited. So I just honestly, which are the reported versions, I'd go to AGLC3 if it's Australian, and then if it's an international case, do a little bit more research. But usually in Australia, we're only referring to Australian and some UK cases. So Westlaw, so this is the other case citator, which is First Point. Westlaw, that's just an example of the homepage if you haven't had a chance to have a look at it. So Westlaw will give you quick links to First Point, and Jill mentioned the Laws of Australia, the encyclopedia that they also publish. So those are great sort of initial points when you're doing legal research to go to if you're looking specifically for cases or for information about an area of law. And I'm a big browser, so as you become more familiar with the tools, for example, which journals that you're looking for, you become familiar with different precedents and forms, and so you can sort of start to go in there and start to browse from there. It enables you to, I guess, do better quality research. If you're searching, you can miss things with legal research, so it's good to do your sort of targeted searching, but also consider browsing as well. And in particular, if you're getting wrong citations, which happens all the time, being familiar with where things are in the databases enables you to search for, say, party names and different spellings of them, or look through different years of a particular law report series. That will enable you to find what they're looking for. And yeah, so this is another one of the exercises that we had from Blackboard. So the CLRs, once you are looking for them a lot, you'll know that they are in First Point. The full text versions are in Westlaw. So then you can just put in your citation details there. Or if you just have a little bit of information, you can sort of refine, we knew it was in the High Court, and we knew it was around this date, and it was about, I don't know, child abduction, I think is the topic today. So that gives you a chance to find your case from a variety of angles. And legal research, there's a lot of, I guess, lateral thinking and creative thinking. So moving on from case law to legislation research, I think we had a few acts that we were looking at, so one of them being the Migration Act. The Federal Register of Legislation is where you find Commonwealth, authorised Commonwealth legislation. You could also find it in OSLI, but this is really the best starting point, and it's quite it's not a bad website database to search. I often use along the top. There's an option to do advanced search if you know the title of the legislation, or you can search it. There's a number of tiles. You can search for current acts that are in force or legislative instruments, so that's referring to subordinate legislation, and you can look it up that way. And similarly, so this is going through the advanced the advanced search from the previous page. We knew it was the Migration Act, and then you can sort of refine it by you want bills, for example, or it's not there on the screenshot, but you could have explanatory memoranda, and so you can look for information about a particular act that way. Finding the act by browsing, so going from the first page to acts in force, and then going to principal acts by, let's start with NI. This is a more, I guess, a broader way if you don't know the exact name of an act, so you can't search for it, but you know it's about migration, or you might have a couple of words, words from the title of the act, or even you can search by the year that it came into force, so you can find the Migration Act that way from the citation. And this is just giving you, I guess this is the text of the bill. What I really like about this website is that it gives you a lot more than just the text. So it'll give you sort of the purpose, which government agency administers the Act or would administer the Act, when it was introduced in Parliament. It'll also give you a table of context to enable you to search either the Act or the bill in this case. And along the top it gives you other options as well. So this one is if the bill comes into force, which acts will it amend? Because it may not just amend one act, it may amend a series of acts. And explanatory memorandum, we'll go into that next module in more detail, but that's a little bit of extra information about the bill that's useful. It's particularly useful to a judge who has to interpret the legislation to look at what was the original intention of the legislators when they were introducing the bill. So that is all there, and it's really worth your while to explore and become familiar with this website. So explanatory memorandum, I think I just went into that. And then each jurisdiction, so Commonwealth and then each state will have their own legislative websites. I think we were looking at Queensland legislation and also Victorian legislation. So this is just what the Queensland legislation website looks like. And so that's produced by the Office of the Queensland Parliamentary Council. And that'll give you the current legislation, acts as they were originally passed, so not the current versions, but if an act was passed, say, in 2010, what it looked like back then, subordinate legislation, so just, I guess, rules and regulations that support the Act, the original bills, and old legislation. And so we would be looking for current legislation, or current version of the Cattle Stealing Prevention Act of 1853. So that's sort of the link that we would take, and it's a little bit of a clunky website, but not too bad. So you can't search it. You do have to go to the letter C for the title of the Act, and then I would do a control find because you have a lot of options, and here you can find the I guess the full text of the current version of the legislation. So hopefully that is what everybody found when they did the exercise, or will find if they have a look at it this week. And I guess if you're looking for more information about the legislation, just using the Queensland examples, still, I guess Queensland Parliament is another good option for looking at that legislation. And in particular, I would go, it's a little bit hard to find, but bills before this Parliament, if you're looking for current bills, I find it useful to look because you get down here because you get the full text of the bill. You get an explanatory note, so what they said in Parliament about the note, and it's sometimes called the second reading speech or the explanatory speech in Queensland. And that's sort of often when you're doing legislation research, having that additional material to support your interpretation of the, your understanding of a particular act is very useful. And so that's sort of current bills. And if you want to look at historical ones, you'd need to do an advanced search, and then you can search what's called Hansard, and I think we'll go into that in a little bit more detail next time, by year and using the text. So that was just, I guess, a sort of a snapshot of some of the Ellen's just asked, how would you find the Act by the title National Services Act 11 and 12 GO 6? So that was put in there just to make you aware that older acts were cited a slightly different way. So that's called a regnal citation. And that sort of, I think it lasted up in Queensland, it was up until the 50s that acts were cited using the regnal citation. GO refers to George. So King George, during his reign, he assented to X number of acts, or in Australia, X number of acts were assented by the Parliament. And this is in the 6th year of the reign of George. You'll find in volumes 11 and 12 this act. So I just had to find one of these yesterday for one of the solicitors that came into our library. It's a print, it's only available in print as far as I'm aware. So yeah, you weren't expected to find it, but just interpret the citation for the purposes of the exercise. And also, it's just helpful just to be aware that there are regnal citations as well as regular citations that we use day to day, such as the Migration Act of whatever it is. So yes, not to worry. But if you go into a piece of legislation that's a little bit older, such as the cattle, whatever it was, Cattle Stealing Prevention Act. So that's its current version, but if you look at older versions of the same act, you'll find that it had, I think it was in the 12th, or the 3rd year of Queen Victoria's reign. So that was 9 Vic.3 as the citation. So just sort of building awareness at this stage rather than needing to find historical legislation. Is there any other questions? I think that was sort of just a snapshot of some of the exercises, and hopefully people felt comfortable with those because it's quite fundamental to be able to interpret and understand citations and how to find the law report series and find the right ones.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon, very much. And are there any queries? Did it sort of, did it feel quite easy once you got your head around it? Is it just like another language that you've just got to find, you know, the best way to interpret it so that you do understand it if you're in a foreign country? I don't know, but Caroline has just come in and asked whether you could explain medium neutral citations and normal citations. I think that was also on the Facebook site. So does that make sense as a query, or do you want? Yep. Okay. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. So I did mention briefly as an example, so the BC citation, if I could just click back through to that. So a medium neutral citation is an unreported case. So that's one that's produced by the court. The regular citations were all over the place. So each I guess each database had its own way of listing it, so that's why we had that. Oh, here we go. So that's sort of random looking citation, the BC number. So medium neutral citations was introduced as a way for, I guess, sort of a consistent way of unreported cases to be located and cited. A normal citation, not sure, I guess the difference between a medium neutral citation is its very specific format. So a medium neutral citation will have in square brackets the year of the case. So in this example, it would be in square brackets of 1996. And then it would have the court that it came from. So if it was from the federal court, it might have the abbreviation for the court, so FC. And then it would have the a page number potentially. So go back to an example. So here, medium neutral citation was the Crown against White, 2004, Victoria Court, Supreme Court of Appeal, and at page 5. So that would be the way to find a medium neutral citation. The reported citation might look like this. So the report series rather than the court, and then the page number where it can be found. Does that answer your question, Caroline? I hope I understood that correctly. Yeah, okay. I apologize, it is a little bit to get your head around, but once you're comfortable, it flows a bit better. So just having that clarity between reported and unreported, and then with unreported medium neutral citations, or there might be database specific citations. So,
good. Thanks for that explanation. So that's hopefully made it a little bit clearer for people. I think you explained it very well at the very beginning in terms of that sort of hierarchy of, the authorized, the unauthorized, the unreported, so that you get that sort of scale. And it's just important to remember that the work of the courts is so large, not every single matter is noteworthy that needs to get reported. So, and that's where I think some of those specialised services like the nuclear services might put in some of the lesser important cases which are of interest to practitioners in a certain field, but they don't need to go into the real authorised reports in the same way. So, yeah, it's horses for courses from that sort of side. So, any other queries for the time being? I'll just move through these a minute. Bear with me. Well, thank you, Shirin, very much. That was really helpful. Hopefully you all found it helpful and you didn't feel quite so isolated in working independently in the same way. So hopefully we can do this with some of the other exercises as we go through as well to try and make things real for you, so you're not it's not too abstract, which is quite challenging, obviously, in a online environment. If you're in a lab where you could just type away and ask questions, it is a different dimension. We appreciate that. So it's really up to you. Please let us know where you're having problems. It's very, very helpful to know what is working for you and what is not. Every cohort of students that we work with is slightly different and has different needs, and so we just want to make it work for you. So let us know how we go. So next week we have actually got a break. It's not quite halfway through, but just because we want to hold the modules together. So we've covered sort of the introduction to Australian law, and now we've looked at secondary sources. Hopefully you've got a feel for that sort of general area. Then we'll become much more specific. The next module will be around legislation and all its sort of idiosyncrasies, and then case law and all its idiosyncrasies. So we're giving you a break to give you a breather. Please use the time to catch up, if you haven't had time to look at everything, because I know we've put a lot of resources there for you. Try and find some time to do some readings or watch the videos or most of all, explore the different databases. So the more you become familiar with those, the better. If you've got the chance to go and visit, say, a court library that does have the older materials as well as the current databases, that will also give you a good flavour of the whole range of resources that are available for you. So that's really it. Another sort of, I don't know, the synchronicity of it, you know, where she referred to the Cardiff Index. So the weekend before last, guess where I was? Cardiff. And tomorrow I've got a Skype call with health librarians in Cardiff, at Cardiff University. We're doing a systematic review of information literacy interventions at universities, comparing face-to-face and online. And so we've got sort of the research team working on that. So Cardiff is very top of mind, as well as everything else. Claire says, legislation on your birthday. Oh, well, I hope you can join us and you're out to dinner. You might be doing much more exciting things so than coming to class. So there's 2 weeks for the next module and 2 weeks for the subsequent module as well. So, right, okay, if that's it, I've actually got my next engagement is to go and race off to the airport and pick up a Norwegian librarian who has just landed to spend a couple of weeks with us in Queensland and then going around Australia. But she's not a law librarian, but I know she's already landed, so I'll be out on the road quickly going to the airport to pick her up. So it's good night from all of us, and enjoy your break. Keep in touch over that time. If you've got anything that's worrying you or anything you want to share, do that. And thanks to Shirin for the debrief, and make the most of your time. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So have fun until then, and yeah, use your time profitably to do everything you want to do. Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks, bye.